They drag her off the plane like she was nobody. Cameras caught the moment. A black woman in a tailored gray suit, calm, collected, and silent, being pulled by two security guards down the narrow aisle. Some passengers gasped. Others looked away, pretending not to see. The crew mumbled something about a seating issue. But what they didn't know, what no one on that plane could have guessed, was that the woman they humiliated was the reason the airline existed at all. She was the money. She was the power. And 6 minutes later, every single one of their planes would be grounded. The story begins not in anger, but in silence. A silence that holds weight, the kind that comes before a storm. Her name was Alicia Grant, a name whispered in boardrooms, respected across Wall Street, feared by rivals, and admired by every young black woman who ever dreamed of breaking the glass ceiling. She was the CEO of Vanguard Equity Group, a private firm managing billions in global aviation investments. To the public, Alicia was the face of progress, graceful, intelligent, and composed. But beneath that calm, she was a strategist who never forgot the streets she came from. Born in Atlanta, raised by a single mother working double shifts at the airport cafeteria, Alicia had spent her childhood watching planes take off and whispering to herself, "One day, I'll fly too." And she did, further than anyone expected. On a quiet Friday morning, Alicia boarded Flight 208 to Chicago. It was supposed to be routine, a 90-minute trip to meet the airline's executive board to finalize a $5 billion expansion deal. The kind of meeting that could change an entire industry. She was dressed simply. No entourage, no security. Just her assistant Maya and a sleek leather briefcase. At first, nothing seemed wrong. She checked her emails, nodded politely to the man in the adjacent seat, and smiled at a baby a few rows ahead. But when two flight attendants approached, whispering, exchanging glances, the mood shifted. "Ma'am, could we see your ticket again?" one asked. Alicia handed it over, calm as ever. Seconds later, the attendant frowned. "It seems there's been an issue with your seat assignment." "Issue?" Alicia asked, her tone measured. "What kind of issue?" "You're in the wrong class, ma'am." That word. Class. Alicia looked around. She was in seat 2A, first class. The same seat she'd sat in dozens of times before. She raised an eyebrow. "I booked this seat myself." The attendant's smile stiffened. "Yes, but this seat is reserved for platinum tier members only." A few passengers turned their heads now. Someone chuckled softly. Alicia exhaled through her nose, her calm unbroken. "Check again," she said quietly. The attendant left, whispering to the other crew. Within moments, a uniformed security officer boarded the plane. Phones came out. Cameras started recording. The officer leaned down beside Alicia. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to step off the plane." "For what reason?" "Ma'am, please don't make this difficult." Alicia slowly closed her laptop. She didn't argue, didn't shout, didn't say her name. She stood, adjusted her jacket, and allowed herself to be escorted down the aisle as passengers stared, some in discomfort, others in judgment. Someone muttered, "She probably snuck in here." Another whispered, "That's embarrassing." The flight attendant avoided eye contact. And as Alicia stepped off the plane, the cameras kept rolling. 6 minutes later, that same plane was still sitting at the gate. The captain was waiting for clearance. But something had changed, something none of them could see. In a quiet office 500 miles away, an automatic alert appeared on Vanguard Equity's dashboard. Alicia Grant's biometric signal. Negative experience logged. The AI system linked to the firm's decision protocols triggered a rapid series of actions, authorization requests, contract suspensions, and fund reallocation alerts. The machine didn't ask questions. It just followed Alicia's standing rule. If I'm disrespected by a partner, the partnership ends immediately. 6 minutes. That's all it took for the airline's financial backbone to crumble. Back at the terminal, Alicia stood by the large window, watching the plane she was removed from. She didn't flinch, didn't frown. Her assistant, Maya, rushed up, pale and shaken. "Ms. Grant, I'm so sorry. I tried to explain who you are." Alicia held up a hand. "Don't. Should I call the airline's director?" "No." she said calmly. They'll call us. Then she turned, her reflection glinting in the glass, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. Let them feel what it's like to be grounded. Within minutes, flight control centers across the country started receiving emergency messages. All operations temporarily suspended pending financial authorization. Pilots waiting on runways were told to hold position. Fuel payments froze. Partner banks halted transactions. No one understood what was happening. And the video was already viral. The clip of the black woman being pulled from her seat spread across social media with captions like, "Racial profiling? On a major airline, this woman deserves justice. Who is she?" By the time the plane doors reopened, every executive in that airline's headquarters had one question. Who the hell is Alicia Grant? The irony was brutal. The same company that had proudly posted about diversity initiatives and black empowerment on social media had just humiliated the very black woman funding their expansion. They didn't know she was the reason their new fleet existed, or that she'd personally approved their $5 billion credit line. Now, the chain of consequences was unstoppable. But for Alicia, it wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about dignity. About sending a message to every boardroom that thought they could buy diversity while disrespecting the people behind it. She looked at Maya and said quietly, "This isn't about me. It's about what happens when they forget who's really keeping them in the air." As the sun set over the terminal, dozens of flights were still grounded. Passengers grew restless. Executives scrambled. The world was beginning to notice. And Alicia? She was already in her car, heading back to her private hangar, where her own jet waited. Unaffected, untouched, unstoppable. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of her statement to the world. Because when you drag a black woman off a plane she built, you don't just insult her, you crash your own empire. The first call hit corporate headquarters less than 10 minutes after the incident. "Sir, we have an issue. Multiple payments are frozen." Then another. "All routes are being flagged for authorization failures." And then the one that stopped the CEO of the airline cold. "Sir, Vanguard Equity just terminated all financial operations linked to our accounts." Inside the gleaming glass tower of Eclipse Airlines, chaos erupted. Screens flashed red. Department heads ran from office to office. Investors demanded answers. The finance department confirmed it. Every cent of Vanguard's funding was pulled. That meant no payroll, no maintenance contracts, no credit to buy jet fuel. In an industry where everything ran on scheduled funding cycles, 6 minutes of silence from Alicia Grant's system meant hundreds of grounded planes. But no one in that building understood why. Not yet. Meanwhile, in a small PR room 2 floors below, a junior communications officer named Devin was watching a video on Twitter. His jaw dropped. Oh my God! It was a video. The one showing a black woman being dragged off an Eclipse flight. It had already hit 1.2 million views in under 30 minutes. The caption read, "Security removed this woman because they said she wasn't first-class material." Turns out she was the CEO of a billion-dollar investment firm. Devin didn't even blink. He grabbed the phone. "We need to get this to the executive floor. Now." At that same moment, Alicia sat quietly in the backseat of her Maybach, phone face down on the leather beside her. The city rolled by, indifferent, loud, busy, while she stared out the window, her mind running faster than traffic. Maya, her assistant, spoke softly. "Ms. Grant, are we really cutting the deal completely?" Alicia didn't answer immediately. She exhaled, slow and controlled. "Maya, do you remember what my mother used to say?" "Yes, ma'am." "Don't beg for respect in a world built to ignore you. Make it cost them instead." Alicia turned, her gaze sharp as glass. "I'm not cutting the deal to hurt them. I'm cutting it so the next black woman doesn't get dragged off a plane just because someone thinks she doesn't belong there." Inside Eclipse headquarters, the PR director was losing her voice. "We need a statement, something fast. This is going nuclear." The legal team was already drafting an apology, but the CEO refused. "We don't even know if it's real. Give me confirmation on who that woman is before we say anything. 5 minutes later, the confirmation came. Her name is Alicia Grant, CEO of Vanguard Equity. The room went silent. Someone muttered, "Oh no." Another whispered, "That's our investor." The CEO's face drained of color. By the time Eclipse Airlines prepared its first official statement, it was too late. The story had gone global. CNN, BBC, and countless blogs ran with headlines like, "Black CEO humiliated on flight. The airline that grounded itself. $5 be gone in 6 minutes. How disrespect cost Eclipse everything." And on Twitter, hashtag respect black women was trending #1 worldwide. Commenters weren't just angry, they were inspired. They shared their own stories of workplace bias, airport humiliation, and subtle racism masked as policy. A single comment under one of the viral posts summed it up. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her power spoke for her. While the internet roared, Alicia's phone lit up. Dozens of messages, calls from journalists, investors, and political figures. Even an old rival from another firm texted her, "You just made history, Alicia. They'll teach this in business schools." But she didn't smile. She simply replied, "They should teach it in HR departments first." Later that afternoon, she walked into her company's headquarters. The lobby was quiet, staff lined up, eyes wide. Everyone had seen the video by now. The atmosphere wasn't one of pity, it was of awe. Alicia paused, looked at them, and said only, "Back to work. We have a world watching." She walked straight into the boardroom where her executive team waited. Screens around the room displayed live coverage of the incident. "Ms. Grant," said one director carefully, "do we proceed with total withdrawal?" "Yes," she said. "Every cent. It'll collapse their liquidity within hours." Then maybe they'll understand the value of respect faster than they learn the cost of arrogance. Meanwhile, at Eclipse's crisis center, phones kept ringing. One investor after another demanded reassurance. Fuel suppliers halted credit lines. Partner banks froze accounts until the Vanguard situation was clarified. The CEO slammed his fist on the desk. "Get me Alicia Grant on the phone right now." The assistant hesitated. "Sir, she's not taking calls." "Then go to her office." "We can't." Her security declined our visit. It was over, and everyone in that room knew it. That night, TV networks aired interviews with passengers who'd been on the flight. A teacher described what she saw. She didn't even argue. She just looked at them like she was beyond all that nonsense. It was the calmest anger I've ever seen. Another witness said, "It wasn't just racism. It was arrogance." They looked at her and assumed she didn't belong in first class. Turns out she owned the airline's future. The contrast between her silence and their panic became a symbol. Memes flooded social media showing the plane being grounded by grace. But Alicia wasn't interested in memes. She was building something bigger. The next morning, she instructed her legal team, "File for termination of partnership, but keep our press response clean. No attacks, no emotion, just facts." Her head of PR nodded. "Understood. Do you want us to confirm why we withdrew?" "No," Alicia said. "Let the truth travel by itself. It moves faster when you don't chase it." That line alone became a viral quote across LinkedIn, TikTok, and Twitter. By the second day, Eclipse Airlines had lost 19% of its market value. 2 board members resigned. Pilots and ground staff demanded answers. And under growing pressure, the CEO finally appeared on television. He looked exhausted, his tone forced. "We are deeply sorry for the misunderstanding involving Ms. Grant. This does not reflect our company's values." It was too late. The world wasn't listening to him anymore. They were listening to her. Because Alicia finally broke her silence. Not with a speech, not with a press conference, but with a single post on her verified account. Humiliation has no class. Respect has no price. I didn't cancel their flights. They canceled their principles. Within an hour, that post hit 25 million views. Within a day, major publications were calling it the most powerful business statement of the decade. For Alicia, though, it wasn't about viral fame. It was about meaning. She sat in her office that evening, looking at the city skyline. reflecting on the irony. How a world that demanded women like her to earn their place still found ways to strip that dignity away. She had spent her whole life fighting for access. Now she was fighting for respect. And for once, she realized she didn't need to prove anything anymore. Her silence had already done the talking. Later that night, Maya entered quietly with a tablet in hand. Ms. Grant, CNN wants an exclusive interview. They're offering prime time. Alicia shook her head. No interviews. Not yet. Then what's next? Alicia leaned back in her chair, a faint smile crossing her lips. Next, we make sure this never happens again. How? By buying the airline that thought it could drag me off a plane. Maya's eyes widened. You're serious? Completely. If they can't fly with respect, I'll teach them how to fly under new ownership. The next morning, a confidential letter reached Eclipse Airlines' legal department. It was a formal offer of acquisition from Vanguard Equity, signed personally by Alicia Grant. The same woman they'd thrown off a plane was now offering to buy the entire airline. The sun hadn't even risen when Eclipse Airlines board directors received a letter. A single page. No threats. No demands. Just a proposal stamped with the gold insignia of Vanguard Equity Group. At the top, in clean serif type, the words read, Offer of acquisition confidential. Underneath, the number, enough to make every man in that boardroom forget how to breathe. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The woman they had dragged off a plane was now offering to buy their entire company. And she wasn't bluffing. Vanguard Equity's assets were more than sufficient to cover the deal. The airline's valuation had already dropped by nearly 40% in the last 72 hours. What had once been a thriving symbol of luxury and growth was now a wounded brand bleeding out in the public eye. And Alicia Grant was holding the knife, not to kill but to operate. At the Vanguard headquarters, the mood was quiet but electric. Alicia stood at the head of the table, a holographic projection of Eclipse's balance sheets spinning in midair before her. They're vulnerable, said one of her analysts. Weaker by controlling shares before the market even opens. Not yet, Alicia replied. They're still arrogant. Let them sweat through the morning. Then we move. Her tone was precise, surgical. No anger, no gloating. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was education. Ms. Grant asked another executive carefully, Are you sure this is what you want? After everything. Yes, Alicia interrupted. I don't build walls. I rebuild systems. They wanted to show me my place. Now I'll show them the sky. By 8 a.m., Wall Street was buzzing. Rumors swirled that Eclipse Airlines was facing insolvency. Credit agencies downgraded their rating overnight. Fuel suppliers suspended contracts. The company's shares plummeted another 15%. And then, like lightning, the news broke. Vanguard Equity makes offer to acquire Eclipse Airlines. Every network carried it. Every headline screamed it. Investors who'd once scoffed at Alicia's power now scrambled to buy back into her orbit. Within an hour, she had the upper hand. Not through threats, but through leverage. Meanwhile, inside Eclipse's skyscraper, panic was spreading faster than truth. Executives fought over responsibility. PR teams flooded social media with desperate statements about commitment to diversity. But the public wasn't buying it. Hashtags turned into movements. Influencers and business leaders rallied behind Alicia. Universities held panels discussing the Alicia Grant effect, how one act of racism had dismantled an empire in days. And in the middle of all that noise, Alicia stayed silent. Her silence was now her language. It spoke louder than any press release. That afternoon, she arrived at Eclipse headquarters, not through front doors, but through the board entrance, escorted by her legal team and 2 Vanguard directors. Every camera in the lobby turned toward her. Every whisper froze. She walked through the same space that had once ignored her existence, now lined with employees watching her like a living legend. Her heels clicked like a metronome of power. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped into the boardroom without a word. The CEO of Eclipse, pale and hollow-eyed, stood to greet her. Ms. Grant, he began, his voice cracking, We want to apologize again for the misunderstanding. Alicia raised a hand. Let's not waste time with apologies. You've had 3 days. I've had 3 decades. Let's talk about your future instead. The man swallowed hard. You're here to negotiate terms? No, she said. I'm here to set them. Her team slid folders across the table. Inside were documents outlining a total acquisition plan. Vanguard would buy 51% of Eclipse's shares, take control of operations, and restructure the company under a new ethical and leadership framework. At the bottom of the final page, a clause written in bold: all discriminatory conduct, verbal, procedural, or systemic, shall result in immediate dismissal without compensation. The CEO scanned the clause, then looked up. This makes us look guilty. Alicia leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but cutting. You are guilty. I'm offering you a way to fly again. Outside, news helicopters circled the building. The world was watching this meeting like a live movie, though no cameras were allowed inside. And as the negotiations continued, something extraordinary happened. The board began to realize they needed her. Not just her money, her mind, her presence, her leadership. Because in less than 72 hours, Alicia had done something no crisis consultant, no PR campaign, no corporate maneuver could have achieved. She'd changed the narrative. What began as a scandal had become a movement. Back at Vanguard, Maya watched the live ticker scroll across financial screens. ECLP plus 12%, Vang plus 18%, hashtag respect black women, 45 million mentions. She smiled to herself. For once, justice wasn't just emotional, it was measurable. By noon, the deal was done. Alicia signed the final document with a black Mont Blanc pen, the same one her mother had given her when she launched Vanguard. She stood, closed the folder, and extended her hand to the CEO of Eclipse. Congratulations, she said. You now work for a company that answers to me. The man hesitated, then shook her hand, his voice trembling. I suppose this is where you say, revenge is sweet? Alicia smiled faintly. No, revenge is cheap, change is expensive, and you're about to learn the difference. The next week, Eclipse Airlines rebranded. New logo, new leadership team, new mission. Billboards appear across airports worldwide with a simple tagline beneath the company's name. Respect takes flight. And right under it, in smaller print, a Vanguard company. Passengers who had sworn to boycott the airline now booked tickets just to support the change. Influencers posted selfies under the new slogan. The world had shifted, and Alicia had made sure of it. In a special interview with Forbes, her only one since the incident, Alicia sat across from a journalist, serene and composed. Ms. Grant, the interviewer began, people are calling you the most powerful woman in corporate America. How does that feel? Unnecessary, she replied. Power isn't the goal. Fairness is. But if you need power to make fairness possible, then use it wisely. Do you forgive Eclipse Airlines for what they did? Alicia paused. Forgiveness isn't the issue. Accountability is. You can't heal what you refuse to name. The interviewer nodded slowly, visibly moved. And what do you hope people take away from this story? Alicia smiled. That silence doesn't mean weakness. And respect shouldn't require a reminder. Later that night, she returned to her private hangar. Her jet, a matte black Gulfstream, was ready. The tail number had been changed. It now read VG001. She climbed aboard, setting her briefcase beside her seat. Through the window, she could see an Eclipse Airlines plane taxiing across the runway, freshly painted in its new colors. Maya sat opposite her, holding a tablet. You did it, she said softly. Alicia looked out the window, thoughtful. No, she said. We did something bigger. We reminded them that respect isn't given, it's enforced. The engines roared to life, smooth and powerful. The jet lifted off the runway, soaring into the night sky. And as the city lights faded below, Alicia whispered to herself, a quiet echo of every woman who'd ever been underestimated. Never again. By the time morning came, news outlets had officially confirmed it. Eclipse Airlines was now under new ownership, and at its helm stood a woman who had turned humiliation into history. A black CEO who had been dragged off a plane, and 6 days later, made the entire world look up. The next morning, every news outlet in America carried the same headline: $5 be invested grounds airline after racial profiling incident. The story spread like wildfire. CNN, Forbes, and countless social channels were on it. Clips of Alicia being dragged off the plane played in slow motion across morning talk shows, with outraged anchors and guests dissecting every frame. But inside Alicia's Manhattan office, there was silence. She stood before a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the skyline, her phone buzzing nonstop with messages, calls, and meeting requests. Her assistant, Maya, hesitated at the door, holding a stack of reports. "Ma'am, the airline stock has dropped 37% overnight," Maya said quietly. Alicia didn't flinch. "Good," she replied. "Let them feel what humiliation costs." Behind her, 3 senior partners entered, all visibly nervous. "Ms. Grant, the board wants to know if you'll reconsider the funding freeze. The press is tearing them apart." And Alicia turned, eyes sharp. "Did they reconsider when they dragged me off that plane?" The room went dead silent. She continued, her voice calm but cutting. "This isn't about money anymore. It's about accountability. They need to understand that our dignity isn't negotiable." Outside the office, social media was boiling. Hashtags like hashtag she grounded them and hashtag Black Excellence Strikes Back trended globally. Clips of Alicia's past interviews resurfaced, ones where she spoke about breaking invisible ceilings and redefining power for Black women in business. Now, she wasn't just a CEO. She had become a symbol. Influencers, activists, and celebrities rallied behind her. Oprah tweeted a simple line: "This is what power looks like when it refuses to be silent." Within 48 hours, the airline CEO, a man named Richard Cole, called a press conference. He stood before the cameras, sweat beading under the studio lights, reading a carefully scripted apology. "We deeply regret the incident involving Ms. Grant. This does not reflect our company values." But even as he spoke, the apology rang hollow, because Alicia wasn't watching. She was preparing for something far greater. In a private meeting with her board, she laid out her next move. Projected on the screen behind her was a new company logo: sleek, minimal, powerful. At the top, 2 words: Ebon Global. Her team exchanged stunned glances. "Wait, you're starting an airline?" one asked. Alicia nodded slowly. "I'm not just grounding their planes," she said. "I'm building my own fleet." The room erupted in disbelief and awe. Her plan was bold: to partner with minority-owned manufacturers, hire diverse flight crews, and set a new standard for how customers, especially Black travelers, were treated in the skies. She leaned forward, tapping the table. "They thought removing me from a plane would humiliate me, but I'm going to redefine what flying feels like for everyone they've ever looked down on." News of her plan leaked almost immediately. At first, critics dismissed it as impossible, but Alicia didn't care. She had already started securing investors, the same global fund managers who had watched the airline crumble after losing her contract. They were eager to follow her leadership now. Behind the scenes, Richard Cole was panicking. He called, emailed, begged for a private meeting. "Let's talk," he said in one voicemail. "We can find a solution together." Alicia finally replied with a single text: "You already had your solution. You drag it off your plane." Weeks passed. Ebon Air began to take shape. Hangars were rented. Engineers were hired. Uniform designers submitted samples that reflected African-inspired luxury. Deep gold trims, elegant patterns, empowering slogans stitched inside jackets. Every decision carried symbolism. Every brand element whispered resilience and pride. Alicia wasn't just creating an airline. She was crafting a movement at 30,000 feet. When the first Ebon Air jet rolled out onto the runway, its tail was painted black and gold, the colors of power and elegance. Alicia stood beside it, cameras flashing, her calm presence commanding every lens. "This isn't revenge," she said softly to a reporter. "This is evolution." Her words went viral again. Millions watched the clip. Some cried. Others smiled. But everyone understood what it meant. Back at the old airline headquarters, the mood was desperate. Richard Cole sat in his office, surrounded by empty coffee cups and unopened reports. The company was losing contracts, facing lawsuits, and struggling to recover from public backlash. One of his advisors whispered, "If she launches at airline successfully, we're done." He leaned back, defeated. "She already launched something," he said quietly. "A revolution." Across the country, a billboard appeared overnight in Atlanta's airport, the busiest in the world. It showed Alicia standing before her jet, arms crossed, a quiet confidence in her gaze. Beneath her, bold white letters read, "We don't drag people off planes. We lift them up." The image broke the internet again, and for the first time in history, people started choosing airlines not for cheap tickets, but for integrity. Alicia didn't just cancel flights. She changed the course of aviation forever. Months had passed since the incident that shook the skies. The name Alicia Grant had become more than a business headline. It had become a symbol etched into the culture itself. Everywhere she went, people stopped her. Airport workers, passengers, young black girls clutching notebooks, asking for autographs. They didn't see her as a CEO anymore. They saw her as proof that silence can roar when it chooses the right moment. Her face graced the cover of Time under the title, "The Woman Who Grounded Injustice." In interviews, she spoke softly, carefully, as if choosing each word away against the power it carried. "This was never about revenge," she said. "It was about showing the world that respect has no price tag, but has consequences." Meanwhile, Ebon first flight took off from Atlanta to New York, a symbolic route. Alicia insisted on being on board, sitting quietly in seat 1A. The plane hummed to life and the cabin filled with warmth, not just from the gold-toned lighting, but from the energy of the crew, confident, diverse, kind. Passengers smiled as they boarded. The music was jazz, smooth and familiar. The air smelled like lavender and coffee, not the sterile cold of corporate airways. When the pilot spoke through the intercom, his voice was steady but emotional. "Welcome aboard Ebon Air's maiden flight. Today we don't just fly, we rise." The cabin erupted in applause. Alicia smiled to herself, hands folded, watching the runway lights blur into motion. Up in the air, the view stretched endlessly, soft clouds, golden light, and the quiet hum of a dream realized. She thought of her father, a postal worker who used to take her to the airport fences when she was a little girl. He'd point at planes and say, "See that baby? One day you'll be up there, not just flying, but owning it." Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "I did it, Daddy." But fate wasn't done with her yet. 2 weeks later, she received a letter, an official one, from the airline that had humiliated her. It wasn't another apology. It was a request. They wanted her to return, not as a passenger, but as a keynote speaker for their new diversity and leadership summit. Her first instinct was to laugh. The irony was too sharp to ignore. The same airline that dragged her out in handcuffs now wanted her to teach them humanity. Maya, her assistant, looked uneasy. "You're not seriously considering it, are you?" Alicia didn't answer. She just stared at the letter, deep in thought. A week later, cameras flashed as Alicia Grant stepped off a black SUV and walked into that same corporate building. The hallway was eerily familiar. The same polished marble, the same company logo glinting under white lights. But this time, the air shifted when she entered. Executives stood straighter. Assistants fell silent. Even the guards near the door looked uneasy. Among them, she saw a face she recognized. It was a security officer, the man who had pulled her off the plane months ago. He froze, his expression tightening, shame flashing across his eyes. Alicia stopped in front of him. For a second, no one breathed. Then she said quietly, "Do you remember me?" His voice trembled. "Yes, ma'am. I didn't know who you were. I was just doing what they told me." Her gaze softened. "That's the problem," she said. "Too many people follow orders without asking if they're right." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't humiliate him. Instead, she extended her hand. "You can start fixing it by making sure no one else is treated the way I was." The man looked stunned, then slowly shook her hand. The cameras captured the moment. a gesture of grace more powerful than any speech. Inside the conference hall, hundreds of employees sat waiting. Alicia walked onto the stage in a charcoal suit, no notes, no teleprompter. She looked out at the crowd, the same organization that once saw her as a disruption, and began to speak. When I was forced off that plane, I thought I'd been humiliated. But what I didn't realize was that I'd been handed a mirror, one that reflected who we really are as a society. Her voice was calm, but filled with conviction. Power isn't about money or titles. It's about choices. The choice to speak up. The choice to do right when no one's watching. The room was silent. Even the CEO, Richard Cole, sat motionless, his jaw tight, eyes wet. Alicia continued, I grounded your planes not because I could, but because I had to remind you that the air belongs to all of us. Applause erupted, slow, hesitant at first, then thunderous. Some stood, some cried. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. When the speech ended, reporters rushed in. Ms. Grant, what made you decide to come back? She smiled faintly, to prove that walking away isn't the only form of strength. Sometimes, standing in the place that broke you and standing taller than before is how you win. The clip went viral within hours. Millions watched, sharing it with captions like, This is leadership. Alicia didn't just reclaim her dignity. She redefined what leadership looked like. Later that night, she returned to her office, the city lights glowing beneath her. On her desk lay 2 photos, one of her being dragged off the plane and one from today, her shaking hands with a guard. Side by side, they told a story of evolution, not revenge. Maya stepped in quietly. You know, she said, people are calling you the Rosa Parks of the sky. Alicia chuckled softly. No, she replied. Rosa walked so I could fly. Outside, the night sky shimmered with passing planes. Some bore the Ebon logo, slicing through the darkness like promises. Others still carried the name of the airline that wronged her. But now, even they had begun to change their tone, their training, their values. Alicia looked out the window, whispering to herself, maybe justice isn't about grounding others. Maybe it's about helping them rise. And somewhere, miles above the city, a plane soared higher, a silent reminder that dignity, once reclaimed, never falls again. Weeks turned into months, and the world began to change in quiet but undeniable ways. Alicia's story wasn't just a headline anymore. It had become a movement. Airports across the United States started implementing new anti-discrimination protocols, citing the Grant Standard as a benchmark for accountability. Corporations invited her to speak not just about business, but about humanity, the kind that gets forgotten in boardrooms filled with profit charts and power plays. But Alicia didn't chase the spotlight. She avoided most interviews now, preferring to spend her days in the background, guiding, mentoring, rebuilding. She knew that true revolutions didn't happen in front of cameras. They happened quietly, in hearts and in policies. One crisp morning, she stood at a new hangar just outside Chicago, watching her second fleet of Ebon airplanes being painted. This time, the design carried a subtle difference, a faint golden pattern on the wings that spelled a message in Swahili. Tuna Inuka. Translation, we rise. Maya stood beside her, clipboard in hand, smiling. You know, people are saying your company changed aviation forever. Alicia smiled faintly. Maybe, but what matters is whether it changed how we treat each other when the seatbelt sign turns off. Her words lingered, soft but profound. In the months that followed, Alicia began launching new programs under the Ebon Foundation, scholarships for young Black engineers, grants for women in aerospace, and partnerships with historically Black colleges and universities to train the next generation of pilots. She wasn't just flying planes anymore. She was building runways for others to take off. At one ceremony in Washington, she addressed a room filled with students, their eyes bright with hope. When they told me I didn't belong, she said, I learned that belonging is something you build. You don't wait for permission to sit at their table. You build your own table and make it longer for those who come after you. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras caught her smiling humbly, but those close to her could see the emotion behind it. The quiet memory of humiliation turned into purpose. As Ebon expanded internationally, Alicia faced new challenges: partnerships, regulations, skepticism. But each time, her calm presence disarmed critics and silenced doubters. When one European executive questioned whether her race focused branding might limit appeal, Alicia replied, "Human dignity is universal. If you see race before you see respect, that's your limitation, not mine." The quote was replayed across media outlets for weeks. Soon, Ebon wasn't just a company, it became a cultural phenomenon. Its ads featured diverse crews smiling under the tagline, "We all belong in the sky." Passengers shared stories of kindness, of being treated with respect for the first time in years. One viral video showed a young black woman crying after a flight attendant called her by name and thanked her for trusting Ebon. "It's the first time an airline ever made me feel seen," she said between tears. That clip alone reached 80 million views. Meanwhile, Alicia's influence started to stretch far beyond aviation. Executives from banks, tech companies, and hospitals reached out, seeking her advice on rebuilding trust after discrimination scandals. Her approach was always the same: firm, graceful, and grounded in truth. "Diversity isn't decoration," she told one CEO. "It's direction. Without it, you're flying blind." Her words began circulating in business schools. Case studies were written about her leadership. Professors called her the architect of ethical capitalism. But Alicia didn't care for titles. When asked what she wanted her legacy to be, she simply said, "That people remember how I made them feel, not what I made them buy." Yet, beneath the waves of praise, she remained human, quiet, private, reflective. On late nights, she'd sit alone in her penthouse office, watching the city lights flicker below, wondering what her father would say if he could see all this. Maya once asked, "Do you ever miss your old life? Before all this?" Alicia thought for a long moment before answering. "I miss being invisible sometimes. But if visibility means others can find courage, then I'll stand in the light as long as I need to." Her next move surprised everyone. Instead of expanding Ebon's luxury routes or pursuing government contracts, she announced a partnership with humanitarian organizations to deliver aid across Africa and the Caribbean. Reporters called it a radical pivot. Investors called it risky. Alicia called it right. In one interview, she explained, "Power means nothing if it doesn't lift others. I've spent my career proving I could fly higher than their expectations. Now it's time to use that altitude to reach those still grounded." And so Ebon Humanity was born, a fleet dedicated to delivering supplies, medical care, and hope to underserved regions. Every flight carried the company's motto on its fuselage: "No one gets left behind on the ground." One afternoon, in a small village in Ghana, a group of children ran toward a landing Ebon Humanity jet, their faces lit with wonder. Alicia stepped down from the plane, greeted by cheers and laughter. A little girl handed her a hand-drawn picture, a plane flying over a heart. "Is this yours?" Alicia asked, smiling. The girl nodded. "One day I'll fly it too." Alicia knelt down, her voice warm. "Then I guess I'd better keep building them for you." The moment was captured by a journalist and shared online. Within days, it became another viral symbol of Alicia's impact, not as a mogul, but as a mentor, a mother figure, a beacon. Her legacy began weaving itself into every corner of society. Artists painted murals of her in cities like Detroit, Lagos, and London. Poets wrote verses about the woman who turned humiliation into horizon. And on social media, the phrase "we rise because she did" became a movement in itself. Thousands using it to share their own stories of resilience. At the annual Global Leadership Summit, Alicia was awarded the Humanity in Business Prize, the first black woman ever to receive it. As she walked on stage to accept it, the crowd stood in thunderous applause. Her speech was short but unforgettable. "I was once told that I didn't belong on a plane. Now I know I was meant to build one." And maybe that's the point. Every act of exclusion can become a blueprint for creation. You can break my seat, but you can't break my spirit. The audience rose to their feet again. Some wept openly. And at that moment, Alicia didn't see fame or wealth. She saw faces, thousands of them, each carrying a piece of the same journey. As she left the stage, Maya whispered, You've changed the world. Alicia smiled softly. No, she said. The world just remembered it could change. That night, as her jet soared above the Atlantic, she looked out the window at the endless dark sky, dotted with stars, each one a reflection of the people she'd lifted. In the distance, another ebon airplane crossed paths, its lights blinking like a heartbeat. For the first time in a long while, Alicia allowed herself to exhale. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the altitude before the next climb. When the world saw the viral clip of the black CEO calmly standing as uniformed officers tried to remove her, of her saying with unshakable grace, "You don't know who you're talking to, but you will remember this day." Something shifted. The airline's PR team scrambled, but it was too late. Within hours, the story exploded across every major outlet. Headlines read, "Black CEO pulled off plane. Airline faces $5 billion fallout. Corporate racism meets its reckoning." She didn't shout. She just ended their future. And while the airline stock began to plummet, investors started calling their lawyers. Board members turned on each other, and the CEO who'd ordered her removal quietly resigned before the week ended. Meanwhile, Angela didn't post a single angry statement. No interviews. No press tours. She simply posted one tweet. Respect isn't a privilege. It's the bare minimum. Actions have consequences. That tweet hit 42 million views in less than 24 hours. And while the airline tried to issue an apology, calling it a misunderstanding, Angela had already moved her $5 billion investment elsewhere, to a new airline startup majority black-owned, with fair wages, open hiring, and zero tolerance for discrimination. Within months, that small company tripled its valuation, signed multiple international routes, and publicly thanked her for believing in the people others overlook. The irony? Many of the flight attendants and pilots laid off when the old airline joined the new one, some even recognizing her as the woman they had once seen escorted off a plane. And every time someone mentions her name now, they don't talk about her as the black woman who was disrespected. They say, she's the woman who turned humiliation into history. Because this wasn't revenge. It was a reminder that when you have power and you use it with principle, you don't need to scream. You just change the system. And somewhere late at night, in an empty corporate boardroom, another executive scrolls through that viral clip. The CEO standing tall, quiet, powerful. And they whisper to themselves, "We can't afford another Angela." But what they don't realize is there's an Angela rising in every city, in every boardroom, in every young black woman told she doesn't belong. And this time, they're not waiting for permission to board. They're building the planes. So next time someone tries to take your seat, remember Angela. She didn't fight to sit down. She stood up, and the world had to move around her. Because when power meets purpose, when grace meets truth, you don't need revenge. You need vision. And one woman's embarrassment became $1 billion wake-up call. So the next time someone doubts you, smiles when they dismiss you, or tries to pull you off your path, just remember, you don't have to prove who you are. You just have to remind them who they're dealing with.